Tuesday morning was hot and muggy in London, as it often was in the middle of February. The clock in Trafalgar Square struck 10 when Carmen Andrade stepped off the bus on Oxford Street, gripping her faded market bag firmly. At 72, she had the posture of someone who had lived a lot, but wouldn't bow to adversity. Her simple floral dress was clean, but clearly worn by time, as were her brown Velcro shoes that knew every corner of that neighborhood. Carmen walked slowly, feeling the weight of the vegetables and fruits she had bought earlier at Borough Market. Tomatoes, courgettes, bananas, and some potatoes she had managed to get at a good price. Her pension wasn't generous, and every penny had to be stretched to its limit. But today she wasn't there just to shop. She had a pending issue that had been bothering her for weeks. The National British Bank branch was located in an imposing mirrored glass building right in the city's financial heart. Carmen pushed the revolving glass door and entered the spacious, air-conditioned lobby. The cold air conditioning contrasted with the street's heat, making her press her bag a little tighter against her body. The environment was modern, with light marble flooring that reflected the LED lights from the ceiling, rows of black leather sofas, and digital screens displaying currency and stock quotes. She walked to the reception desk, where two young attendants chatted animatedly. One of them, with straightened blonde hair and perfectly manicured nude nails, wore an impeccable navy blue suit. The other, a brunette with her hair pulled back in an elaborate bun, wore a white silk blouse and a black pencil skirt. Both looked like they had stepped out of a corporate fashion magazine. When Carmen approached, the two stopped, talking, and looked at her. It was a quick glance, but loaded with judgment. The blonde, whose ID badge identified her as Jessica, slightly raised an eyebrow. The brunette, Patricia, hid a smirk as her eyes scanned the elderly woman's simple dress and market bag. "Good morning," Carmen said politely, resting one hand on the high counter. "I need to resolve a problem with my account. They're charging me fees I don't recognize, and I've tried calling several times, but no one resolves it." Jessica sighed as if she had been interrupted from something important, without fully raising her eyes. To Carmen, she lazily extended her hand. "ID and card." Carmen opened her small fabric purse and carefully took out her documents. The attendant took everything mechanically, typed something on the computer with deliberate slowness, and, without even looking at the screen for more than 2 seconds, returned the papers. "You'll have to wait, ma'am. Sit over there and we'll call you," Jessica said, making a vague gesture towards the sofas. "Roughly how long, dear?" Carmen asked gently. Patricia discreetly rolled her eyes. "I don't know, ma'am. You can see it's busy. You have to wait." Carmen nodded and walked to the sofas. She chose one in the corner, near an artificial plant, and sat down with her bag on her lap. The bank was indeed busy. Executives with leather briefcases, elegant women with designer handbags, young people with laptops under their arms, all flowed in and out constantly. She watched patiently, waiting her turn. 15 minutes passed, then 20. Half an hour. Carmen saw 3 people who arrived after her being called to the counter. A man in a gray suit was attended to by Jessica with a wide smile and a lively conversation about investments. A woman in an elegant green dress received VIP treatment from Patricia, who even offered her coffee. Carmen frowned but continued waiting. Perhaps they were clients with appointments, she thought, trying to be understanding. But as more time passed and more people cut in front of her, an uncomfortable feeling began to grow in her chest. By 11:30, she had already been there for an hour and a half. She stood up and returned to the counter. Patricia was fiddling with her phone, laughing at something on the screen. Jessica was organizing papers with a bored expression. "Excuse me, girls. I've been waiting for quite some time. Could you please attend to me soon?" Carmen asked, maintaining her polite tone. Jessica didn't even look up. "We already told you. You have to wait. There are people ahead of you." "But those people arrived after me," Carmen insisted, pointing to a young man in a polo shirt who had just entered. Patricia finally looked at her, this time with poorly disguised irritation. "They have appointments, ma'am. You arrived without an appointment. Go back and wait, and we'll get to it when we can." The tone was harsh, almost hostile. Carmen felt her cheeks burn, but she took a deep breath. She wouldn't let herself be rattled. She returned to the sofa, now with the growing certainty that something was wrong. Next to her, a younger woman around 50, well-dressed, sat waiting to be called for a meeting. She looked at Carmen sympathetically. "How long have you been waiting, ma'am?" she asked in a low voice. "Almost 2 hours," Carmen replied. The woman grimaced. "That's ridiculous. They shouldn't do that." Carmen gave a sad half-smile. "I guess it's because I don't look the way they expect." The woman was about to reply, but her name was called, and she had to leave. Carmen was alone again, clutching her market bag, feeling the weight of the silent humiliation being imposed on her. At the counter, Jessica and Patricia whispered and giggled, casting glances in Carmen's direction. The blonde discreetly pointed to the market bag, and both laughed louder. A passing employee, a young man with an intern's ID badge, frowned as he noticed the scene but said nothing. Noon arrived. 2 full hours of waiting. Carmen saw the branch's activity increase even more during lunchtime. Rushed business people, employees from nearby offices, all being attended, too quickly and courteously, except her. That's when a security guard, a black man in his 40s named Reginald, noticed the situation. He had been observing Carmen for some time, noting that she had been there since his shift began. He approached the attendants. "Ladies, hasn't that woman over there been waiting for a long time?" he asked, pointing discreetly to Carmen. Jessica shrugged. "She has to wait. It's busy." "But I saw you attend to several people who arrived after her," Reginald insisted. Patricia glared at him with irritation. "Reginald, you're security. Mind your own area and let us do our job." "I just think it's unfair. The lady is elderly and has a heavy bag." Jessica crossed her arms. "Look, she's retired. She has nothing better to do. She can wait. And her market bag is not our problem." Reginald shook his head, indignant, but knew he didn't have the authority to intervene further than that. He stepped away but continued to monitor the situation from afar. Carmen remained seated, but now she took a small notebook from her bag and began to jot down details. Arrival time, attendants' names read from their ID badges, descriptions of their behavior. Her daughter always said she was meticulous, and that trait was now proving useful. 1 o'clock in the afternoon. 3 hours of waiting. Hunger was starting to gnaw, but Carmen wouldn't leave without resolving her problem. More people continued to be attended to before her. A young man with a backpack and branded trainers, an executive with a tablet, an elderly gentleman in a suit who was received as if he were a prince. At 2 o'clock, 4 hours after she had arrived, Carmen stood up again. This time her patience had run out. She walked to the counter, with firm steps, despite the tiredness in her legs. "I need to speak to the manager. Now," she said, with a voice that allowed for no further delays. Jessica openly rolled her eyes. "The manager is busy. Then I'll wait for him to be free. But I'll wait here, in front of the counter, for everyone to see," Carmen replied, planting herself firmly there. Patricia scoffed. "You're being ridiculous, ma'am." "Am I ridiculous? Or are you two who are making me wait 4 hours while you attend to everyone who arrives?" Carmen retorted, raising her voice slightly. The argument began, to attract attention. Other clients looked on curiously. Reginald approached again, ready to intervene if necessary. That's when a glass door at the back opened, and a man in his mid-40s, wearing an expensive gray suit and a burgundy tie, walked out with long strides. "What's going on here?" he asked, in a tone that mixed authority and irritation. Jessica was quick to respond. "Manager Claude, this lady is making a scene because she doesn't want to wait her turn." Carmen stared at him. "I've been waiting for 4 hours, sir. I arrived at 10 in the morning, and these young women made me wait while they attended to dozens of people who arrived after me. I need to resolve undue charges on my account, and I've been treated with disrespect." Claude, the manager, adjusted his tie and gestured for Carmen to follow him. "Come with me. We'll sort this out in my office." Carmen picked up her bag and followed him. The office was spacious, with a mahogany desk, leather chairs, and a panoramic view of the street. Claude sat in his swivel chair and indicated a chair for Carmen. ID and card, please, he requested, turning on his computer. Carmen handed them over. Claude typed, analyzed the screen, and his expression subtly changed. He saw it was an old account, opened decades ago, but without major movements or investments. Just a monthly pension deposit and regular withdrawals. "How long have you had an account with us, ma'am?" he asked. 32 years. "I see. And what exactly is the problem?" Carmen explained about the undue charges, the frustrated attempts to contact by phone, and most importantly, the humiliating wait she had just endured. Claude listened with a neutral, almost indifferent expression. When she finished, he took a deep breath. "Look, Mrs. Carmen, I'll be frank with you. These fees are systemic. Everyone pays them. But I didn't contract these services," she insisted. "Sometimes the system generates automatic charges. I'll see what I can do, but I don't promise anything." "And what about the treatment I received out there?" Claude shrugged. "The branch was busy. The girls were doing their job. You might be exaggerating a bit." "Exaggerating?" Carmen felt indignation rise. "I was ignored for 4 hours. I saw with my own eyes dozens of people being attended to before me. Ma'am, with all due respect, you are retired. You don't have urgent commitments. Other people had appointments, business matters. It's normal that they are prioritized." Carmen clenched her fists over her bag. "I will speak to the board of this bank." Claude laughed, a mocking laugh that echoed through the office. "You're going to speak to the board? And how do you intend to do that? Do you have their private phone number? Do you know someone high up?" Carmen didn't reply immediately. She just stared at him with a calm that contrasted with his arrogance. Then slowly, she opened her purse and took out a simple mobile phone, one of those with a physical keypad and a small screen. "I'll call now if you'll permit me," she said. Claude crossed his arms, still smiling. "Be my guest. I'd love to watch." Carmen dialed a number and put it on speakerphone. The dial tone echoed in the silence of the office. Once, twice. On the third ring, someone answered. "Hi, Mum," said a firm, authoritative female voice on the other end of the line. Claude's smile froze. "Hi, dear," Carmen replied, her voice serene. "Sorry to bother you at work, but I need your help." "Of course, Mom. What happened? Are you all right?" "I am, but I've been at a bank branch for 4 hours. I was humiliated by the attendants, ignored, and now the manager is telling me I'm exaggerating." There was a pause on the other end. When the voice returned, it was icy. "Which branch?" "Oxford Street, number 3500. Put the manager on for me, now." Claude was pale. His hands trembled as he took the phone Carmen extended. "Hello?" he said, his voice failing. The voice coming from the speakerphone was sharp as a razor blade. "Manager Claude Santos, I presume?" said the woman on the other end, without allowing for formalities. "Yes, ma'am," he replied, swallowing hard. The surname printed on his ID badge seemed to weigh tons at that moment. "My name is Marianne Andrade, and I am the regional CEO of the National British Bank for the entire county of Greater London. The lady sitting in front of you is my mother, Carmen Andrade, and from what I understand, she has been subjected to absolutely unacceptable treatment at the branch under your responsibility." Claude tried to speak, but the words died in his throat. His face, previously flushed with arrogance, was now livid. The hands holding the phone visibly trembled. "Mrs. Marianne, I didn't know there was a misunderstanding," he began, but was interrupted. "I don't care what you knew or didn't know. What I care about is that my mother arrived at 10 o'clock this morning at a bank branch to resolve a legitimate problem, and it is now 2:15 in the afternoon. 4 hours and 15 minutes. She was left waiting while other clients were attended to. This is discrimination, it is abuse, and it is a direct violation of all humanized service protocols that I personally implemented in this institution." Carmen remained seated, watching Claude crumble before her eyes. There was no satisfaction on her face, only a quiet dignity of someone who knew that justice was finally being done. "I will resolve Mrs. Carmen's problem immediately," Claude stammered, already typing frantically on the computer. "No, you won't do anything else. I'll be there in 20 minutes. In the meantime, I want you to gather every member of staff who had contact with my mother today. All the attendants, all the employees. I want names, ID badges, shifts. And Claude, if you think about hiding anything or manipulating this situation, I guarantee your career at this bank ends today. Is that clear? Perfectly clear, ma'am. Put my mother back on. Claude returned the phone to Carmen as if he were holding a hot coal. The elderly woman took the device calmly. Hi, dear, she said softly. Mom, are you really okay? Do you need anything? Water, food? I'm fine, darling. Don't worry about me. I've been through worse in life. I know, Mom. But that doesn't mean you should accept this kind of treatment. I'm leaving my meeting now and I'm on my way. I love you. I love you too, dear. The call ended. Carmen put the phone back in her bag and looked at Claude, who remained paralyzed behind the desk. Can I wait here? Or would you prefer me to go back to the lobby? She asked with subtle irony. You can stay here, please, he replied quickly. I'll ask them to bring water, coffee, whatever you like, ma'am. Water is fine. Claude pressed a button on the intercom and placed the order with a trembling voice. Then he stood up and left the office, leaving the door ajar. Carmen could hear his altered voice giving orders outside. Jessica, Patricia, both of you, in my office now. And I want Reginald too. I want everyone who was in the lobby this morning identified. Quickly. In the lobby, the atmosphere had completely changed. Jessica and Patricia, who were still at the counter attending to clients, exchanged worried glances. What do you think happened? Jessica whispered. I don't know. But the manager is desperate, Patricia replied, feeling a chill in her stomach. Claude appeared at the counter, sweating and with wide eyes. Both of you, stop what you're doing and follow me, now. But there are clients waiting, Jessica protested. I don't care. Move. The two dropped everything and followed the manager, their high heels clicking on the marble floor. Reginald, the security guard, was also called. When they entered the office and saw Carmen sitting there, calm, drinking water from a disposable cup, they felt that something was very wrong. Do you know who this lady is? Claude asked, pointing to Carmen. A client, Patricia replied, confused. She is the mother of the regional CEO, Marianne Andrade. And Dr. Marianne is coming here now because you two treated her mother like dirt. For 4 hours. The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica turned white. Patricia put her hand to her mouth, her eyes wide with panic. Reginald, on the other hand, had to hide a smile of satisfaction. This can't be happening, Jessica murmured. It is happening, Claude confirmed. And when Dr. Marianne gets here, she'll want explanations. So I suggest you start thinking very carefully about what you're going to say. But sir, we didn't know who she was, Patricia began, her voice failing. And does that change anything? Claude exploded. You should treat all clients with respect, no matter who they are. But you didn't do that, did you? I saw it in the system. Dozens of services were performed while Mrs. Carmen waited. Why? Jessica tried to explain. They were scheduled clients, investors, people in a hurry. Lies, Reginald interjected for the first time. I was in the lobby. I saw you attending to people without appointments. I saw you laughing and pointing at the lady. I heard the comments about her market bag. Claude closed his eyes, feeling the situation worsen with each second. Carmen just watched, in silence. She didn't need to say anything. Her presence, there was already sentence enough. Everyone will stay here and wait for Dr. Marianne's arrival, Claude ordered. No one leaves this room. The minutes that followed were torturous. Jessica cried softly, her makeup smeared. Patricia bit her perfectly manicured nails, ruining the manicure. Claude paced back and forth, mentally rehearsing what he would say. Reginald remained standing, arms crossed, a silent witness to everything. Carmen, for her part, remained serene. She opened her market bag, took out a banana, and began to peel it calmly. She hadn't eaten anything since breakfast and needed energy. The simple gesture seemed to amplify the discomfort of the others. 18 minutes later, the sound of screeching brakes in front of the bank caught everyone's attention. Through the office window, they could see 3 black luxury cars double-parked, blocking part of Oxford Street. Suit-clad security guards exited first, opening doors. And then she appeared. Marianne Andrade was 47, with black hair pulled back in an impeccable bun, a navy blue power suit that cost more than any employee's monthly salary at that branch. Her Louboutin shoes clicked on the floor with authority. She wore thin, gold-framed glasses that gave her an even more imposing air. 2 assistants accompanied her, carrying tablets and folders. The CEO entered the bank like an elegant whirlwind. The entire lobby stopped. Clients interrupted transactions. Employees froze. She didn't even look sideways, just asked the first person she saw, "Manager's office?" Someone pointed and she followed, her assistants 2 steps behind. When the office door opened, everyone inside automatically stood up, except Carmen, who remained seated. "Mum," Marianne said, and all the hardness in her face disappeared for a moment. She crossed the room and hugged Carmen carefully, as if embracing something precious and fragile. "Are you all right?" "I am, my dear. Now I am." Marianne pulled away, checked that her mother was indeed well, and then turned to the others. Her face returned to a mask of cold authority. "Manager Claude Santos, I presume?" "Yes, ma'am," he replied, his voice hoarse. "And these are the attendants Jessica Oliveira and Patricia Mendez?" The 2 nodded, unable to speak. "And you are?" Marianne asked Reginald. "Reginald Ferreira, security, ma'am. I'm here because I tried to intervene when I noticed what was happening to Mrs. Carmen." Marianne nodded. "You stay. The others, you can start explaining how a client, any client, can wait 4 hours in a bank branch without being attended to." "Mrs. Marianne," Claude began, "there was a communication failure." "Communication failure?" Marianne repeated, in a dangerously low tone. "My mother arrived here at 10 in the morning. It is now 2:40 in the afternoon, 4 hours and 40 minutes. This is not a communication failure. This is negligence. This is discrimination." "The attendants didn't know who she was," Claude tried. "And should they need to know to treat her with respect?" Marianne cut him off. "That's exactly the problem. You only treat well those who appear to have money, power, influence. Someone who arrives in simple clothes, carrying a market bag, is automatically considered less important, less worthy of attention. Is that it?" "It wasn't because of that," Jessica began, but her voice failed. "It wasn't?" Marianne took a step towards her. "Then explain to me why, according to the system records my assistant is already checking, 43 services were performed in this branch between 10 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. 43. And my mother, who arrived at 10 sharp, was not among them." One of Marianne's assistants showed the tablet with the data. Claude looked and turned even paler. There was no denying the numbers. Marianne continued. "Do you want to know why my mother was here today? I'll tell you. She was acting as a mystery shopper." "Mystery shopper?" Claude repeated, confused. "Yes. It's a program I implemented 6 months ago in all branches in the region. We hire ordinary people with diverse appearances, different ages, varied social classes to test our service, to verify if we are truly fulfilling our mission as an inclusive and humanized bank. And my mother generously volunteered for some tests." Carmen took another sip of water, observing the reactions. Marianne continued. "This was not her first visit. In the last 3 weeks, my mother visited 5 different branches. 4 treated her wonderfully well. 1 treated her as you treated her today. Guess which one?" No one replied. "Exactly. This branch. The model branch on Oxford Street. The one that should be a benchmark for excellent service. And do you know what my mother discovered? That you are excellent at serving executives, business owners, premium clients. But when someone simple arrives, someone who seems not to have money, the treatment changes completely." Patricia began to cry openly now. Jessica kept her eyes down, her hands trembling. Claude seemed to have aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Marianne opened her own folder and took out some documents. "Here are the reports from the other visits. Here, the testimonies of other mystery shoppers who pass through this branch. The pattern is clear: discrimination based on appearance, prioritization of clients who appear to have more resources, systematic disrespect for the elderly, simple people, manual laborers. Marianne walked to the office window, observing the movement on Oxford Street below. The silence in the room was suffocating. When she turned around again, her face was even more serious. "Do you know the mission of the National British Bank?" she asked, but didn't wait for a reply. "To serve all Britons with dignity and respect, regardless of their origin, social class, or appearance. This mission is displayed in every branch, in every institutional material, in every training you undergo. But apparently, they are just pretty words on the wall." "Dr. Marianne, I can explain," Claude tried once more, but she raised her hand, silencing him. "You'll have your chance to explain. All of you will, but not here. Tomorrow, at 9 in the morning, I want everyone at the central headquarters, 12th floor meeting room. There will be a formal hearing with the Human Resources Department, the Ombudsman, and the Ethics and Compliance Directorate. Each of you will testify about what happened today." Jessica sobbed louder. Patricia wiped away tears with the back of her hands, smudging her makeup even more. Claude nodded mechanically like an automaton. "But before that," Marianne continued, "I want you to resolve my mother's problem now. Immediately. These undue charges she mentioned. I want to see the statement. I want to see the fees. And I want to see everything refunded. Within the next 5 minutes." Claude almost ran to the computer. His fingers typed frantically, opening screens, checking entries. Carmen stood up and went to the desk, pointing to the amounts she didn't recognize. "There, that maintenance fee. That additional card fee I never asked for. That insurance fee I never contracted." Marianne watched over the manager's shoulder. Claude, sweating cold, confirmed each irregularity. "How did this happen?" he murmured, more to himself. "I'll tell you how it happened," Marianne replied. "It happened because you have abusive product sales targets. It happened because someone in this branch or in telemarketing decided to push services onto an elderly client who probably wouldn't question it. It happened because there is a culture of profit at any cost, without caring about ethics." Claude didn't reply, just continued processing the refunds. £540 in undue charges accumulated over the last 6 months. For someone living on a pension of little more than minimum wage, it was a fortune. "Done," he said, turning the screen so Carmen could see. "All amounts have been refunded. The money will be available in your account within 2 hours." Carmen checked carefully, took the receipt he printed, and put it in her bag. Marianne placed a hand on her mother's shoulder. "Let's go, Mum. You've been in this place long enough." Before leaving, Marianne turned one last time to the employees. "Tomorrow, 9 o'clock. Don't be late. Your careers depend on it." Mother and daughter left the office together. The bank lobby remained silent. All employees and clients had realized that something serious was happening. When they saw the regional CEO leaving with the simply dressed elderly woman who had waited for hours, the whispers began. Marianne led her mother to the car, a black sedan with tinted windows. The driver opened the back door and Carmen got in, still holding her market bag. Marianne got in on the other side. "Mom, I'm sorry I asked you to do this," Marianne said as soon as the car pulled away. "You don't need to apologize, dear. It was important. I saw with my own eyes how people are treated when they don't have power. Even so, I shouldn't have let you go through that." Carmen squeezed her daughter's hand. "I've been through much worse things in my life, you know. Remember when you were little and I cleaned offices at night to pay for your private lessons? Remember when your father left us and I had to work 3 jobs to keep you in school? This today was just another day." Marianne felt her eyes well up, but held back the tears. It was precisely why she had reached where she had, so that her mother would never again have to endure humiliations, so that she could live with dignity. "Do you want to go home? Or would you prefer to have lunch first?" Marianne asked. "Let's have lunch. I'm hungry, and that banana wasn't enough." Went to an elegant restaurant in Mayfair, a place Carmen would normally find intimidating, but Marianne insisted. She wanted to pamper her mother after what she had faced. During lunch, they talked about pleasantries, about family, about the grandchildren. But Marianne's mind was already working on what would come next. That night, in her luxurious Chelsea apartment, Marianne sat in her private office and began reviewing all the mystery shopper reports from the past few weeks. They weren't just her mother's, but dozens of other people hired for the program. The numbers were disturbing. Of the 50 branches tested in the Greater London metropolitan area, 13 showed clear patterns of discrimination. Differentiated service based on appearance, deliberate delays for clients who seemed simpler, veiled or explicit rudeness. The Oxford Street branch was one of the worst, but it wasn't alone. Marianne made notes, highlighted the most serious cases, and prepared presentations. The next day's meeting would be just the beginning. She planned a complete overhaul of the service culture across all branches under her responsibility. Meanwhile, in Carmen's modest Islington home, the elderly woman prepared her simple dinner: rice, beans, a fried egg. She sat at the table alone, as she did every night since her husband passed away 15 years earlier. The television in the living room broadcast the news, but she wasn't paying attention. She thought about the day she'd had. She thought about how she had felt being ignored, being treated as invisible. She thought about how many other people went through this every day, but didn't have a CEO daughter to call. How many elderly, how many poor, how many simple workers were silently humiliated. She had raised Marianne alone, with sacrifice and love. She had worked as a cleaner, cook, laundress, anything that paid the bills. She had never graduated from university, never held an important position, but she had given her daughter every opportunity she herself never had, and Marianne had seized every one of them. Carmen smiled, remembering her little daughter, studying by candlelight when the power was out, because they hadn't paid the bill. She remembered teenage Marianne, winning a full scholarship to study at a private school. She remembered her graduation in business administration, then her MBA, then her meteoric rise in the corporate world. Today, Marianne was one of the most respected executives in the British banking sector. But to Carmen, she was just the girl who still called every day, who insisted on paying for better health insurance for her mother, who always visited on Sundays for lunch together. The phone rang. It was Marianne. "Hi, Mom. Did you sleep well?" "I haven't slept yet, dear. I'm having dinner now. I ate too much at lunch. I only managed to have some tea a little while ago. Mom, I wanted to let you know. Tomorrow is going to be a tough day. I'll have to make difficult decisions." "I know, dear. Do what needs to be done." Are you sure you're okay with all this? You're not upset with me for asking you to do this test?" Carmen chuckled softly. "Dear, I volunteered, remember? You didn't even want it to be me. You were worried, but I insisted, and I did well. Those people need to learn a lesson. They will learn, I promise you. Just don't be too harsh, my dear. Remember, you were also young once and made mistakes." "Mom, what they did wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate cruelty. But I will be fair, I promise." They said goodbye, and Carmen finished her dinner. Before going to bed, she knelt beside the bed, as she did every night, and prayed. She thanked for the blessings, asked for protection for her daughter and grandchildren, and asked for wisdom for everyone involved in what was to come. The next morning, Tuesday, dawned cloudy in London. Claude woke up at 5 in the morning, unable to continue sleeping. His wife noticed his agitation. "What's wrong?" she asked, sleepily. "That meeting today. I think I'm going to be fired." "You don't know that. Maybe it's just a reprimand." Claude shook his head. You didn't see her face. The regional CEO. She was furious. And rightly so. "I was an idiot." He got up, took a long shower, chose his best suit. If he was going to be fired, at least he would leave with dignity. He ate breakfast without appetite and left home 2 hours earlier than necessary. Jessica also woke up early, but for a different reason. She had spent the night awake, crying, replaying every moment of the previous day. Her mother, with whom she lived in an apartment in Camden Town, had tried to console her. "Dear, everyone makes mistakes. You'll get through this." "But Mum, I was horrible to that lady. I laughed at her, ignored her, treated her like dirt, and she was the CEO's mother. The CEO's mother." Her mother knew it wasn't just the fear of losing her job. It was shame, a heavy conscience. Jessica looked at herself in the mirror and didn't like the person she saw there. Patricia had an equally difficult night. She lived alone in a studio in Shoreditch, supported by her bank salary and some extras she made selling financial products. If she was fired, she wouldn't be able to pay the rent. She would have to return to her parents' house in the countryside. She would have to admit that she had failed in the capital. She arrived at the bank headquarters at 8:40, 20 minutes before the meeting. Claude was already there, sitting in a chair in the reception area on the 12th floor. Jessica arrived 5 minutes later. The three exchanged glances but didn't speak. What was there to say? At 9 o'clock sharp, they were called in. The meeting room was spacious, with a huge oval dark wood table. On one side sat Marianne Andrade, Human Resources Director Richard Campbell, Ombudsman Representative Anna Powell, and Ethics and Compliance Director Frederick Mason. On the other side, 3 empty chairs awaited the summoned. "Please sit," Marianne said in a neutral voice. They obeyed. The meeting began with a cold formality that made the gravity of the situation clear. Richard Campbell, Human Resources Director, a man in his mid-50s with gray hair and reading glasses hanging around his neck, opened a thick folder full of documents. "This is a formal disciplinary investigation meeting," he announced in a grave voice. "Everything said here is being recorded for internal record-keeping purposes. You have the right to explain yourselves, to present your version of the facts, and to request union representation if you wish. Would anyone like to make any of these requests before we begin?" The three shook their heads negatively. They were resigned to what was to come. Marianne remained with an impenetrable expression, her hands clasped on the table. Beside her, Anna Powell, a black woman in her 40s with long braids tied in a ponytail, opened her laptop. "Let's start with the facts," Anna Powell said. "Yesterday, February 3rd, at 10 o'clock in the morning, Mrs. Carmen Andrade entered the Oxford Street branch to resolve a legitimate problem with her bank account, undue charges that had previously been reported by phone without resolution. Correct so far?" Silence. Then Claude replied, "Correct." Mrs. Carmen was initially attended to by receptionists Jessica Oliveira and Patricia Mendez. What happened in that first contact? Jessica swallowed hard. She asked for help with the charges. I took her documents and asked her to wait. And what was the estimated waiting time you informed her? Jessica lowered her eyes. I didn't inform a specific time. Why? Anna Powell asked. Because it was busy. There were a lot of people. Frederick Mason, the ethics director, a thin man with heavy-rimmed glasses, intervened. According to system records, between 10 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, 43 services were performed at that branch. Mrs. Carmen was not among them, despite having arrived at the beginning of that period. How is this possible if it was so busy? Patricia tried to answer. Some clients had prior appointments. 43 appointments in 4 hours? Frederick questioned, with evident skepticism. We have the records here. Only 17 were confirmed appointments. The other 26 were walk-in services, meaning people who arrived without an appointment, just like Mrs. Carmen. Silence again weighed heavily in the room. Jessica and Patricia knew there was no escaping the numbers. Marianne finally spoke, her voice cutting the air like ice. I'm going to ask a direct question, and I expect an honest answer. Why did you two leave my mother waiting while you attended to other people who arrived after her? Jessica started crying again, but Patricia, gathering desperate courage, decided to be honest. Because she seemed like a simple person, with old clothes and a market bag. We thought she wasn't an important client. The room fell into absolute silence for long seconds. Richard Campbell closed his eyes, shaking his head. Anna Powell furiously typed on her laptop. Frederick adjusted his glasses, incredulous. Marianne took a deep breath before continuing. So you admit that you discriminated against my mother based on her appearance? Based on the assumption that she didn't have enough money or relevance to deserve attention? Patricia nodded, tears finally streaming down her face. Yes, that's what we did. And I know it was horrible, I know. Jessica sobbed. We made a mistake, a big mistake. We commented on her bag, laughed, made jokes. It was cruel. There's no excuse. Claude remained silent, but his turn was coming. Marianne turned to him. And you, manager Claude Santos. When my mother finally managed to speak to you after 4 hours of waiting, how did you react? Claude took a deep breath. I looked at her account in the system. I saw it was an old account, but without major movements, without significant investments. And I, wrongly, minimized her problem. I said she was exaggerating. I insinuated that she didn't have important commitments because she was retired. And when she said she would speak to the board, what did you do? Marianne continued. I laughed. I mocked her. I asked how she would gain access to the bank's top management. Claude replied, his voice choked. It was the most stupid and arrogant thing I've ever done in my career. Richard Campbell spoke. Manager Claude, are you aware that as branch leader, you had the responsibility to ensure that all employees followed humanized service protocols? How many trainings on this have you attended in the last 2 years? Claude thought. 5, maybe 6. 6 trainings, Richard repeated. In each of them, it was emphasized that discrimination based on appearance, social, class, age, or any other factor is unacceptable and subject to dismissal for just cause. You signed a commitment term after each training, correct? Correct, Claude admitted. Frederick Mason opened another document. In addition to yesterday's incident, we have other reports. 3 mystery shoppers visited your branch in the last 6 weeks. 2 were treated appropriately. 1, a 63-year-old woman dressed simply, reported an experience similar to Mrs. Carmen's. Prolonged waiting, rude service, prioritization of seemingly wealthier clients. Are you aware of this? Claude shook his head. No, I wasn't. As manager, it is your obligation to monitor the quality of service, Frederick reprimanded. Your negligence allowed a discriminatory culture to take root in your team. Anna Powell intervened. I would also like to address the issue of undue charges. Mrs. Carmen reported £540 in unauthorized fees accumulated over 6 months. How did this happen? Claude sighed. Probably tied sales made by telemarketing or the branch itself. We have very aggressive product sales targets. Sometimes employees end up insistently offering services or even activating them without clear client consent. And you, as manager, did you oversee these practices? Anna Powell asked. Not as much as I should have, Claude admitted. I was focused on meeting targets. So you prioritized numbers over ethics, Anna Powell concluded. Yes, I did. Marianne stood up and walked to the window. From up there, she could see the entire city spread out before her. Millions of people, each with their stories, their struggles, their dignities. And inside the banks of this city, how many were being treated as her mother had been treated? She turned around. Do you know why I created the Mystery Shopper program? She asked, but continued without waiting for an answer. Because numbers lie. Satisfaction surveys lie. People are afraid to complain, afraid of retaliation, afraid of not being heard. So I needed to see the truth with my own eyes. Or rather, through the eyes of ordinary people you wouldn't recognize as important. Marianne returned to the table. My mother is not just my mother. She represents millions of Britons who enter bank branches every day and are invisible to you. They are the domestic workers, the delivery drivers, the retirees, the self-employed. People who sustain this country with their sweat, but are treated as second-class citizens because they don't wear a suit or carry an executive briefcase. Jessica was crying openly now. Patricia had her face hidden in her hands. Claude stared fixedly at the table. Richard Campbell took 3 separate envelopes. After analysis of the facts, testimonies, and evidence presented, the Human Resources Department, in conjunction with the Ombudsman and the Ethics and Compliance Department, has reached the following conclusions and determinations. He opened the first envelope. Jessica Oliveira and Patricia Mendez, for direct and serious violation of the institution's code of ethics and conduct, for proven discrimination based on appearance and social class, and for behavior that brought discredit to the bank's image, you are being dismissed for just cause, effective immediately. The 2 young women began to sob uncontrollably. Jessica tried to speak. Please, I need this job. I have bills to pay. We all do, Richard replied, without emotion. That should have been considered before humiliating an elderly client. He opened the second envelope. Manager Claude Santos. Although your conduct was equally serious, we consider that part of the responsibility lies with the pressure for targets and the corporate culture you helped perpetuate, but which was also imposed on you. Therefore, you will not be dismissed, but you will be demoted. You will lose your management position and be transferred to an administrative role without team leadership, with a corresponding salary reduction. In addition, you will be required to undergo an intensive 3-month ethical and humanistic retraining program before you can apply for any leadership position again. Claude nodded slowly. It was more than he deserved, and he knew it. Marianne added, I want to make it clear that these decisions are not personal. They are institutional. If it weren't my mother, if it were any other mystery shopper or any real client, the consequences would be the same. We cannot have a culture of partial respect. Either it's integral or it doesn't exist. Anna Powell closed her laptop. The employees have until the end of today to collect their personal belongings from the branch. They will do so accompanied by security and an HR representative. Manager Claude will have 1 week to transition his responsibilities before assuming his new role. The meeting was adjourned. Jessica and Patricia left first, devastated. Claude stayed for another moment. Dr. Marianne, he said before leaving, I just wanted to apologize. Not to you because I don't deserve your time, but to your mother. I was cruel and arrogant with her, and she didn't deserve any of that. Marianne stared at him. You will have the chance to apologize to her personally. It will be part of your retraining process. But for now, just leave and think about the kind of leader you want to be from now on. Claude left. When the door closed, Richard commented, You were tough, but fair. Not tough enough, Marianne replied. But I need to balance justice with the opportunity for redemption. The attendants crossed a line that cannot be institutionally forgiven. They will have to learn that lesson elsewhere. Claude can still learn here, Frederick agreed. And what about the branch? What's the next step? Marianne already had everything planned. We will implement immediate changes. First, a new manager, someone with a proven track record of humanized management. Second, complete retraining of the entire branch team, not just on protocols, but on real empathy. Third, installation of an anonymous evaluation system where clients can report discrimination in real time. And fourth, an increase in the frequency of mystery shopper visits, Anna Powell added. I also suggest that this branch become a pilot for a broader cultural transformation program. If we can turn the culture around there, we prove it's possible anywhere. Approved, Marianne said. Make it happen. The next 3 months were a period of intense transformation. The Oxford Street branch became a laboratory for a new service culture that Marianne envisioned for the entire bank. A new manager was appointed, Paul Henry Adams, a 42-year-old man who had excelled in a branch on the outskirts of London precisely for treating all clients with equal dignity, regardless of how much money they had. Paul Henry arrived with a clear mission: rebuild trust, re-educate the team, and prove that it was possible to be profitable without being predatory. In the first few days, he gathered all the employees and told the story of what had happened. Not to shame them, but so they would understand the gravity and never repeat the mistakes. The story of the elderly woman who was humiliated and then revealed to be the CEO's mother spread rapidly throughout the entire banking system. It became an urban legend, a topic of happy hours, a theme for training sessions. Some details were exaggerated, others minimized, but the essence remained. Never judge a client by appearance. Jessica and Patricia, after being dismissed, faced very different realities. Jessica moved back in with her parents in Croydon. She found a job at a clothing store in the shopping center, earning less than half of what she made at the bank. The first few days were filled with deep shame. She avoided looking into the eyes of customers, especially the older and simpler ones. It was an elderly woman, around 70, who entered the store looking for a dress for her granddaughter's wedding, who forced Jessica to confront her demons. The elderly woman was humble, dressed simply, and Jessica felt a pang in her chest upon seeing her. Automatically, her old training wanted to judge, but she forced herself to stop. "Can I help you, ma'am?" Jessica asked, with genuine kindness. "I'm looking for something pretty but not too expensive," the woman replied shyly. "It's for my granddaughter's wedding." Jessica spent the next hour helping that elderly woman. She showed options, suggested combinations, praised when the woman tried on a light blue dress that looked beautiful on her. When the sale was concluded, the woman thanked her with tears in her eyes. "You are very kind, young lady. Not all sales clerks treat people like me with such care." Jessica felt a lump in her throat. "It's the least I can do, ma'am. You deserve respect, like everyone else." When the elderly woman left, Jessica locked herself in the store's bathroom and cried. She cried for the woman she had become. She cried for Mrs. Carmen, whom she had humiliated. She cried for the lost chance. But she also cried with relief, because she realized that there was still time to change, to be a better person. Patricia had an even harder path. Unable to find formal employment quickly, she started working as a self-employed cosmetics salesperson. She went door to door, faced daily rejections, and felt firsthand what it was like to be invisible to people. One afternoon, she rang the doorbell of a luxurious apartment. An elegant woman opened the door, looked Patricia up and down with disdain, and said, "I don't buy anything from door-to-door salespeople," and slammed the door in her face. Patricia stood still in the hallway, feeling the humiliation burn, and then she understood. That was exactly what she had done to Mrs. Carmen. Judge, despise, diminish. Tears came, but with them also came a determination. She would not be defined by the worst moment of her life. She would rebuild herself, a better person, a better professional. Meanwhile, Claude underwent the most intense retraining program of his life. 3 months of workshops on ethics, empathy, humanized leadership. He was required to work a week as a teller, to experience firsthand the pressure on frontline employees. He was required to accompany vulnerable clients, to understand their realities. The hardest part was when he had to write a formal apology letter to Carmen Andrade. He spent days drafting, tearing up, starting over. How to ask for forgiveness for so much arrogance, so much prejudice. Finally, he wrote something honest and handed it to the HR department, which forwarded it to Marianne. The CEO read the letter in her office. It was sincere, without cheap justifications, without trying to victimize himself. Claude took full responsibility and asked for forgiveness, not to be absolved, but because he recognized that he had made a grave mistake. Marianne took the letter to her mother on a Sunday for lunch. Carmen read it in silence, her reading glasses resting on the tip of her nose. When she finished, she folded the paper carefully. "He seems sincere," she commented. "He does," Marianne agreed, "but only time will tell if it's real change or just temporary guilt." "Even so, I accept his apology," Carmen said. "Everyone deserves a chance to start over." "You're too generous, Mom," Carmen smiled. "I'm not generous. I'm just realistic. Holding a grudge doesn't hurt those who hurt us. It hurts us. I forgive him. But I hope he'll be better from now on." Weeks turned into months. The Oxford Street branch began to show surprising results. Against all the expectations of skeptics who thought humanized service would hurt profits, the branch saw its numbers improve. Customer satisfaction rose, complaints dropped drastically, and, curiously, product sales increased. Paul Henry explained the phenomenon in meetings with other managers. When you treat people with respect, they trust you. And when they trust you, they buy. It's that simple. We don't need to push products down their throats. We need to offer real solutions for real needs. Marianne monitored everything closely. She visited the branch unannounced, observed the services, talked to clients in line. She herself dressed more simply on some visits, testing whether the learning had truly been internalized. And most of the time, she was satisfied with what she saw, but she knew the work was far from over. One transformed branch was just one victory. She had dozens of others under her responsibility. The mystery shopper program was expanded. More people were hired from diverse backgrounds and origins. Elderly people, young people from the outskirts, people with disabilities, informal workers. All entered the branches and tested the service. The results were compiled monthly. Branches with poor performance received immediate intervention. Managers were summoned, teams retrained, some employees dismissed when discrimination was blatant and reiterated. Branches with good performance received public recognition and bonuses. The transformation was neither easy nor quick, but it was real. Old employees, accustomed to the old culture, resisted. Some resigned, preferring to work in institutions where they could maintain their prejudices. Others, reluctantly at first, began to realize that treating everyone with dignity was not only the right thing to do, but also made the job more rewarding. 3 months after the incident, on a sunny May morning, Carmen returned to the Oxford Street branch. Not out of banking necessity this time, but because Marianne had asked her to. There was a symbolic inauguration of the new culture, an internal event to celebrate the transformation. When Carmen entered, wearing the same simple dress from that fateful February morning and purposely carrying a market bag, the atmosphere was completely different. The receptionist, a young black woman named Elaine, who had recently been hired, smiled genuinely. "Good morning, ma'am. How can I help you today?" "I came to visit. My daughter works here," Carmen replied with a smile at the corner of her lips. "How lovely. She'll be happy to see you. Would you like me to inform anyone?" "No need, dear. I'll just take a look." Carmen walked through the lobby. She observed the employees attending to clients of all kinds. An elderly gentleman in overalls, seemingly straight from a construction site, being treated with the same attention as an executive in a suit. An elderly lady with a shopping bag being patiently helped by a young attendant who explained investment options suited to her reality. Reginald, the security guard, was there. When he saw Carmen, his eyes lit up. He approached. "Mrs. Carmen, what a pleasure to see you again, and this time under much better circumstances." "Hi, Reginald. I see you're still here." "I am. And now, I work in a place I'm proud of. Things have changed a lot, you wouldn't believe it." "I can imagine," Carmen said, looking around. "You helped with that change. You were the one who tried to defend me that day." Reginald blushed slightly. "I just did what was right. And sometimes that's all we need, people doing what's right." Paul Henry, the new manager, appeared and greeted Carmen with respect. "Mrs. Carmen, it's an honor to have you here. I'd like to give you a tour of the branch, show you the changes we've implemented." Carmen accepted. Paul showed the new queue system that prioritized the elderly and people with reduced mobility, but guaranteed fair service for everyone. He showed the evaluation board where clients could anonymously rate each service. He showed the staff break room, where they had installed motivational phrases about empathy and respect. The most symbolic change was on the main wall of the lobby. A large plaque read, "In this bank, everyone is welcome. Your dignity does not depend on your account balance." Just below, a photo of diverse people of all ages, colors, and styles, smiling. Carmen stood for a few minutes looking at that plaque. She felt her eyes well up, but they were good tears. Tears of someone who sees that suffering was not in vain, that it bore fruit. Marianne arrived shortly after, coming from a meeting at headquarters. When she saw her mother there, she stopped at the door and just watched for a moment. Her mother, the woman who had cleaned floors to pay for her education, was now changing the culture of one of the country's largest financial institutions. "Mum?" Marianne called, crossing the lobby. Hi, dear, Carmen replied, opening her arms for a hug. They hugged there, in the middle of the bank, under the emotional gaze of employees and clients who knew the story. It was a brief but powerful moment. What do you think? Marianne asked. I think you're doing something important, something that goes beyond numbers and profits. I learned from the best, Marianne said, squeezing her mother's hand. That afternoon, there was a small internal ceremony. Marianne gave an emotional speech to the branch team, recalling what had happened 3 months earlier without mentioning names or exposing anyone, but making the lesson clear. Marianne's speech echoed through the bank lobby, her voice firm, but laden with emotion. She stood beside her mother before the assembled team and some clients who had been specially invited for the moment. When I took on the role of regional CEO 2 years ago, Marianne said, I made a promise to myself. I promised that I would not measure my success solely by portfolio growth or branch expansion. I would measure it by the human impact we could generate. Because a bank is not made of money, it is made of people, of trust, of relationships. She paused, looking at the attentive faces before her. 3 months ago, this branch failed miserably in that regard. A client was discriminated against, humiliated, and ignored for hours simply because her appearance did not match the stereotype of a valuable client. That client was my mother, but it could have been any of your mothers, fathers, or grandmothers. It could have been you yourself on a bad day, dressed simply. Carmen remained beside her daughter, her hands clasped in front of her body, listening attentively. Her silent presence carried immense weight. Marianne continued. What happened here was serious, but it was not exclusive to this branch. It was a symptom of a culture that needed to change throughout our institution, a culture that valued appearance over essence, profit over ethics, numbers over humanity. And I decided that had to end. She gestured to the renovated branch around them. You who are here today are part of a new era, an era where humanized service is not just a slogan on the wall, but daily practice, where every client, no matter who they are, is treated with the dignity they deserve. And the results prove that we were right. This branch has not only improved in customer satisfaction, but also in financial performance, because people return where they are well treated, because trust generates loyalty. There was spontaneous applause. Paul Henry, the new manager, smiled with genuine pride in his team. Elaine, the receptionist, discreetly wiped away a tear. Reginald, the security guard, applauded vigorously. Marianne raised her hand, asking for silence. But I didn't come up here to talk only about victories. I came to talk about continuous responsibility. The transformation we started cannot stop. Every day, every service, every interaction is a chance to reaffirm our values or betray them. And I count on each of you to always choose the right path. She looked at her mother, who nodded with an encouraging smile. I want my mother to say a few words, if she wishes. Carmen didn't expect this, but she approached the small microphone they had prepared. She cleared her throat, a little nervous. She wasn't used to public speaking. Well, I'm not good with speeches like my daughter, she began, eliciting gentle laughter. But I want to say one thing. When I walked in here 3 months ago, I felt invisible. I felt as if my life, my time, my dignity didn't matter. And that hurts. It hurts a lot. Not because I'm a CEO's mother, but because I am a human being. She looked around, connecting with each face. Each of you has the power to make someone feel important, or to make someone feel invisible. I know your job is difficult. I know there are targets, pressures, bad days, but never forget that on the other side of the counter is a person with a history, with struggles, with dignity. It might be a person who woke up early, took 2 buses, saved money from their lunch to pay the bank fee. It might be a person who is fulfilling the last wish of a departed relative. It might be a person who is trying to rebuild their life after a tragedy. Carmen's voice grew firmer. Treat every person as you would like your mother to be treated, your grandmother, your child. Because in the end, we are all the same. We all deserve respect, and kindness costs nothing, but it's worth everything." The silence that followed was profound, broken only by emotional applause. Several employees were visibly touched. A young attendant openly cried, and Carmen went down to hug her. After the ceremony, as people dispersed, Carmen asked to take a walk around the area. Marianne had more meetings, but canceled everything. That time with her mother was more important. They walked along Oxford Street, mother and daughter side by side. Carmen still carried her market bag, now empty, but which she kept for symbolism. Marianne, despite her high heels and executive suit, slowed her pace to match her mother's. "Do you know what I'm most proud of, Mum?" Marianne asked. "Your position, I imagine," Carmen replied with a mischievous smile. "No, I'm proud to be your daughter, to have learned from you what truly matters." Carmen squeezed her daughter's arm. "You were always intelligent, dedicated. I just showed that success without character is failure." They stopped in front of an old bakery, a place Carmen used to frequent when Marianne was a child, and they lived in a tiny apartment in Bloomsbury. "Let's have some coffee," Carmen suggested. They entered the simple bakery, with its formica tables and plastic chairs. Marianne, in her designer suit, sat down without any embarrassment. She ordered a coffee with milk and toasted bread, exactly as she did when she was a teenager. "Remember when we used to come here on Saturdays?" Marianne asked. "I remember. You loved the bread and butter here. You said it was the best in the world." "It still is," Marianne said, taking a bite and smiling. They talked about the past, about the difficulties they overcame together, about dreams realized and challenges still to come. Carmen told stories Marianne already knew, but never tired of hearing. Stories of when she worked 3 jobs, of when she sold cakes to supplement her income, of when she saved penny by penny to buy the books Marianne needed for school. "You never complained, Mum, even when things were terrible." "Complaining wouldn't change anything," Carmen replied. "Working would, and I had you to raise. I had a purpose." As they left the bakery, it was already mid-afternoon. They decided to walk a little further. It was when, turning a corner, Carmen stopped abruptly. There, on the pavement, sitting on a step, was a young woman. A young woman Carmen recognized immediately. It was Jessica. The former bank employee was dressed simply, in jeans and a t-shirt, very different from the elegant suits she used to wear. She held some shopping bags and seemed to be waiting for someone. When her eyes met Carmen's, she turned pale. Jessica stood up quickly, hesitant. For a moment, it seemed she was going to run away. But then, gathering courage, she took a step towards Carmen. "Mrs. Carmen," she said, her voice failing. I didn't expect to find you here." Carmen observed the young woman. She noticed the dark circles under her eyes, the weight loss, the humility in her gaze that was once arrogant. "Hi, Jessica." Marianne positioned herself beside her mother, protective, but Carmen gently touched her arm, signaling that it was all right. Jessica swallowed, hard. I need to apologize for what I did, for what I said, for how I treated you. It was horrible. It was cruel. And there's no excuse. I know I was dismissed for just cause, and I deserved it. But that doesn't take away the weight of the guilt. Every night I think about that day and I feel ashamed. Tears began to stream down the young woman's face. I wasn't like that before, or maybe I was and never realized it. But now, after losing everything, having to start from scratch, feeling firsthand what it's like to be treated with contempt, I understand. I understand what I did to you, and I regret it so much. Carmen remained silent for a moment, studying Jessica. The young woman was clearly remorseful, but Carmen had lived long enough to distinguish true remorse from self-pity. "Have you learned your lesson, Jessica?" Carmen asked, her voice soft but firm. "I have. I learned the hard way. I lost my job, my independence, my pride. But more than that, I lost respect for myself, and I'm trying to regain that. I work in a store now, I earn little, but I Treat every client, every person, as I would like to be treated, because now I know how much it hurts to be on the other side. Carmen took a step forward and, to Marianne's and Jessica's own surprise, opened her arms and hugged the young woman. Jessica stiffened for a second, then collapsed, crying on the shoulder of the elderly woman she had humiliated. "I forgive you," Carmen said softly, "not because you deserve it, but because holding on to anger hurts me more than it hurts you. You made a mistake, a big mistake, but everyone deserves a second chance. Everyone deserves the opportunity to be better." Jessica sobbed. "Thank you. Thank you so much. You didn't have to do that." Carmen pulled away, holding the young woman's shoulders. "I didn't have to, but I wanted to, because kindness and forgiveness are not weaknesses, Jessica. They are the greatest strengths a person can have. And I hope you carry that lesson for the rest of your life, that you treat everyone always with the dignity they all deserve." Jessica nodded vigorously, wiping away her tears. "I will, I promise. I will be a better person." "Good. Then I didn't waste my time that day," Carmen said with a small smile. The three women stayed there for a few more minutes, talking. Jessica told them about her new job, about how she was rebuilding her life. Marianne, initially skeptical, began to perceive real sincerity in the young woman. When they finally said goodbye, Jessica hugged Carmen once more. "You are an incredible person," Jessica said. "I hope one day to have half your greatness." "You will, if you choose it every day," Carmen replied. Jessica walked away, waving as she disappeared into the crowd on the street. Marianne looked at her mother with renewed admiration. "How do you do it, Mom? How can you forgive like that?" Carmen sighed. "Because I've lived a long time, dear, and I've learned that we are all imperfect. We all make mistakes. The difference lies in who learns from their mistakes and who repeats them. That girl learned. I saw it in her eyes." They returned to the car waiting a few blocks away. On the way back home, Carmen looked out the window, watching the city pass by. London, with all its contrasts, its injustices, but also its possibilities for redemption and new beginnings. "Mum," Marianne said, breaking the silence. "Thank you." "For what, dear?" "For agreeing to do that test, for having the courage to go through that, for teaching me once again what truly matters." Carmen smiled. "I thank you for doing something with what happened, for transforming my humiliation into real change for other people." The car stopped in front of the building where Carmen lived, an old but well-maintained building in Islington. Marianne got out and accompanied her mother to the apartment as she always did. Inside the modest but cozy apartment, filled with family photos and memories of a lifetime, Carmen made tea for the two of them. They sat in the small living room with the television off, just enjoying each other's company. "Do you know what makes me happiest about all this?" Carmen asked. "What, Mum?" "That you didn't become like them. You reached the top, you have power, money, influence. But you didn't lose your humanity. You didn't lose the ability to see people." Marianne felt her eyes well up. "I learned from the best teacher." They talked until the sun set, painting the London sky with shades of orange and pink. When Marianne finally stood up to leave, she hugged her mother for a long time. "I love you, Mum." "I love you too, my dear. Now go. Your family is waiting for you." After Marianne left, Carmen went to the window and watched her daughter's car disappear down the street. She smiled to herself, satisfied. There had been pain on that journey, but there had also been purpose. There had been injustice, but there had also been justice restored. There had been cruelty, but there had also been redemption. She looked at the faded market bag hanging on the hook near the door. That bag, which had been a source of ridicule, was now a symbol of transformation. Carmen took it and carefully put it away in a cupboard. One day, when her grandchildren grew up, she would tell them this story. She would tell them about the importance of treating everyone with dignity, regardless of appearances. That night, before going to sleep, Carmen said her usual prayer. She thanked for the blessings, for her wonderful daughter, for the opportunity to have made a difference. And she asked that this lesson spread, that it touch hearts, that it change minds. 3 months after that, reunion with Jessica. The Oxford Street branch won an internal award for the best humanized service in the entire National British Bank network. The transformation had solidified. Other branches began to follow suit. The mystery shopper program expanded nationally, and it all started with an elderly woman in a simple dress and a market bag who refused to accept being invisible. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope Carmen's and Marianne's story has touched your hearts and made you reflect on how we treat the people around us. If this narrative moved you, made you think, or simply entertained you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of the stories we lovingly prepare. Leave a like if you agree that every person deserves respect, regardless of their appearance or social standing. And in the comments, we really want to know, have you ever experienced discrimination or witnessed something like this? How did you react? Your stories inspire us to continue bringing narratives that matter. Every day we publish new content that explores the complexity of life, human challenges, and the triumphs of the spirit. This is just one of the many emotional journeys we have prepared for you. Thank you for being part of this community that believes in the power of good stories. See you in the next video. Until then.